And you were telling about the priest announcing in church that there would be a search.
Yes, there'll be a search for one particular family is missing, and we must find them.
Did they intend that to mean your family?
I would imagine, of course, it's the only family was missing. And they mentioned 5 people, and there was another family also survived, which was only 3, so probably they were referring to us. And this says, and they announced that like have certain groups, certain areas be assigned. You're going to look, so many homes, and so many people will look in so many homes. So you can imagine his feelings, or their feelings, when he heard that. Of course, he cannot run out, in the middle of a situation there, in the church. He had to wait till it's finished. And as soon as they finished, the church was done and finished, and came home. Well, I'm not sure if he was running, but he couldn't show any emotions or fear or whatever. He came in with a panic and says, "Please," he says, whatever name he said, "Jake, quickly to the emergency bunker." And we ran down, covered us up. Well, air was very little, dark, damp, cold, sitting. 5 of us just crouched like this and waiting. We didn't know for how long. It didn't take long, about an hour. The dogs started to bark. He had about 2 dogs on a chain, what I have on the farm, started to bark. And before you know, they're knocking at his door, and we heard every word. And they knock at the door, and he opens up, he was sort of expecting it, and he was the type of personality, as I said, very loud in his voice, and great personality, sort of joking around. And he says, "Oh, hello." He says, "Yes." He says, "I guess you know we're here." "Yes, I heard in church." He says, "Please come in." He says, "Have you got any Jews here?" He says, "No." "Can we look?" So sure, go and look. So they looked at the rooms. Actually, there wasn't much to look at there. "Can we go in the basement?" He says, "Sure." So he opens up. There was a trap door. He opens up the trap door, and it was dark, no lights, no nothing. And I could see some flashes of light, so maybe they had some kind of flashlight. And he goes first, and it wasn't very steep down. I don't know, I would say about 8 steps. And he went down first, and I could hear voices, 2 or 3 men, for sure. And right away he is attracting to that shelf. As I said before, there was a shelf facing for storage. And on that shelf was stored, they used to make a lot of home brew themselves, wine. And he started a conversation to these bottles. He says, "Oh, I just finished making this home brew, and I tried a different recipe from this wheat and this so on." And they start talking and talking, and they asking questions and so on. And I could see a flash of a light in here, and that's it. It took about a minute, 2 was the most, and that was the end of it. They backed right out, and I walked out. During this time, now the reason he was louder than usually. He was very clever in case of a sneeze or a cough. So he tried to drown in case that sound comes out of there. So he was very, very loud, you see. And moving around these bottles, making a lot of noise. He told us that after that. So that was as close as could be. God forbid if, my sister at that time was, 8, 9 years old. She could have cried for fear or coughed or whatever. Nothing happened. Not a sound from us. So that was very close to death, one particular occasion. And another one I also remember, I'll never forget it, when April 1st comes out, which is Fool's Day. Always comes into flashing through my mind. That was the 2nd time. And that time was also, we were caught downstairs, sitting in the living room or kitchen. It was all in one. And we heard the dogs really, really barking loud. And they had these curtains drawn, but again, they were light that you could see through. And we could hear, again, men talking. And so there was about 3 windows, 2, and then the other side, and they keep looking, they could see. So we had to find a corner where they could not see us, or immediately we lay down on the floor against the wall as possible, away from being seen. 5 of us. It's pretty tricky to do that, you know, in a short period of time. And the dogs could not reach to the door coming in. See, they were all running around and barking loud. And they could hear conversation. We couldn't make it out. And it was going on, I would say, for a minute, talking, walking. I couldn't see any shadow through the window, you know, looking in or anything. And then it got quiet. We couldn't hear any voices. The dogs were barking, but a little less. So my father was curious to see, you know, at least he stood up and looked. Sure enough, there were civilians with rifles walking away. I think he said 3 or 4 men. So there again, we don't know whether they were suspicious of this family or what. And that was the second time. Since then, we never went down again.
How did you spend your days? Do you remember?
What could we do there? We didn't read. There was nothing to read. They didn't, you know, there was a poor farmer. He had no magazines, no papers. I just don't know. You know, how much you wonder. And my parents never talked about it, what we did. I remember we were delicing ourselves. We were full of lice. Fleas, you know, these bad fleas galore from hay, you know, so we were changing, you know, if you don't eliminate them, naturally, what's the change is going to do? So we grabbed hay from a different corner, you know, and put on top. And waiting for the food, which was basic food, just about the daily, was potato soup and 95% water and a piece of dark bread. This is the food I remember was eating. We were eating, and once a day or twice.
Did you talk amongst yourselves?
Obviously we did. Obviously we did. We just hushing, you know, because there again, as you saw, the roof, it was from straw, you know, there was spaces in case somebody is walking around, so we just barely.
Was there any observance of any Jewish holidays?
Maybe my father remembered. Again, I don't see him having any prayer books, because we didn't take nothing with us. If he remembered, so maybe there was, maybe he said some prayers, I don't know. But there again, the Sefer Torah was with us. And, but we were on alert, listening into the conversation what was going on downstairs. You see, let's say there was the attic, this is the kitchen, the living room where they were sitting, and there was an old wooden door and actually spaces, you know, galore, so you could hear every word they were saying. So my father stuck his head down a bit, you know, at night or whenever they were home, which is during the day they were on the field most of the time, just to listen to what they're talking about, you see. And then I took turns, you know, and I listened in when they were awake. This is the kind of things we were doing, you see, and just waiting for information, what's going on, mainly with the war. So the only time we would know, he'd bring us information from his meetings. And yes, he brought us some little pamphlets, you know, from these different things that was going on. Till finally, when the Russians, you know, finally succeeded, they fought back hard enough, and the Germans started retreating. So every word was just like gold. You see that the Germans are retreating. So there's hope, closer and closer. And that took almost a year before they were coming closer and closer. So finally, the day we could hear already the heavy artillery banging away at night. You know, especially at night you could hear it, you know, from the distance, which probably would have been, who knows, 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers away. You know, so we could hear that, and that was already hope. You see, embracing each other, you know, and this and that, and any day. Now, and finally the moment came, and it was getting closer and closer, and before we knew, the fire, you know, the cannons were flying over our roof, you know.
How did you manage to bring a Torah in with you?
Well, bring where? To Canada?
No,
well,
with you in hiding.
Well, he just took it under the arm, and that was it. That's the only possession we took. Mainly my mother. She was carrying it around.
Do you have any recollection of having any celebration for your bar mitzvah?
No. But I remember I remember the date, or my father told me, or my parents told me the date. It was lying on the roof, on the attic. That I was 13 years old. I guess they remembered the month, the day, you know. And that was it. I had no idea what's all about.
Did you have any interaction with the daughter from the family who was saving you?
During?
While you were there?
Oh, yes. I can tell you a few things. She was 19, good looking.
Her name?
Janina, the only daughter, very strong. Actually, she helped on the farm. And she was the one bringing us the food, you know, carrying a big pot like that up the staircase and taking away the waste on a daily basis. She wasn't too happy. She didn't show any compassion or feelings. She showed her feelings being angry. You could tell in her face. She wasn't talkative. And we let it go at that. We couldn't talk to her much because she wasn't staying, trying to make a conversation. How are you? There was no such thing. Just brought it, put it down, take away the bucket, you know, and so on. And then she met a friend, a boyfriend. And he was courting her for a month going on, and we were quite worried. She, you know, that she may resent, she can be free, you know, so on, you know. There was no shows in the village that you could take out. They had no vehicles, so where do you go? You walk, or you go to her room or a home and stay and talk, or outside. And in the winter time where you can't be outdoors, so naturally the thing is to bring her into her room. She couldn't do that. And at that time we were really tried to be very observant and listen to their conversations, especially when they were sitting outside. There was a bench, so we moved in closer and tried to listen. You know, not be noisy what they're talking about, their personal things. It's just what's coming out, whether she's going to tell them or not. And then I could hear, he says, why can I come into your room, you know? He says, it's cold. He says, I want to come in your room. He says, no, you can't. He says, why? He says, you know, my family is very religious. He was also clever. Is very religious. And to such time, we're going to get engaged. And to be married, it's not proper. You should come to my room. That's what she told him. Wow, and we heard that. And he accepted that, of course. So these are the occasions I recall. And she married him after, you know, the war was over. She did marry him.
Did your parents pay for this?
Zilch, zero. After we were free, and the Russians came in, we were free. I don't know exactly what my mother told them. Of course, we all hugged and cried and everything. And we walked out. She must have said something to him. He says, we did it because I believe to help out if people are in need. These are the kind of words, you know, she used. So she must have said something to them. But anyways, we walked out of there. It was in the morning. It was, I think it was in May or April. I couldn't walk. I could barely walk. Everybody walked. I couldn't. My knees swell up, you know, from no circulation and everything. So whether they would hold me up, anyway, it was about 2 miles to walk. So I says, I'll crawl, I'll walk, I'll do anything. I managed to come home. And we came up. We knew somebody's living there, because, you know, we were told that somebody's living there. We knocked at the door, and we came in, and somebody's there, and they looked at us, and my parents introduced themselves. I said, my name is so-and-so. This is our home, and we survived the war, and we want to be here. And he says, don't worry, he says, you can stay with us. There's enough room, you know, for everybody. And that's all I remember. Before I knew, they're packing up and they're leaving. And they left.
I just want to go back a minute and ask you how and when you found out the war was over.
Okay. As I said before, the artillery was getting closer and closer. Before we knew, you could hear, the fire, over the roof, and you could see at night, like fire flashing and so on. And it was going on. As a matter of fact, that particular home where we stayed there happened to be a little bush, heavy bush, you see, and the Germans, I guess, tried to fight back, and they dug themselves in there for overnight, and this was going on all night. And if I may add, the night before, during the day, Mr. Barr and Joseph and Eula, and everybody went to the field to do their work. They went home. This was happening. So they got caught in the fire and they couldn't leave the field. So we went for safety, just in case the roof catches fire, we're in big trouble. So we went downstairs. We weren't afraid already for the Germans at that time, or for the Poles, because the war was like a lot of things was happening, you see. So we opened the trap door and we went downstairs, at least some safety. And we sat there all night. The trap door was open. We just sat there all night and just waiting. And then it's sort of early in the mornings, it was less and less shooting, and then it was quiet. You couldn't hear a thing. And the day break came, and we were waiting, because we knew probably why they couldn't come back from the field. And around 8 or 9 o'clock they came, opened the door, and they says, "You are freed, the Russians are here." So this is, we were aware when it was all over.
And then you were back in your home?
We went to our home, and what happened then, and they left, and we tried to proceed with our life. The normal things, work on a field. We had a big piece of land, a garden there, next to it, tried to work. So we were minding our own thing. And there were some threats at night. Again, we had these shutters for the windows. We had to bolt them up every night. We did that, before the war started too, because it was a type of village and attitude of the Poles, of the peasants, to make trouble. So we were closing these shutters, and you could hear at night, screaming again, back to the past before the war. And so we sort of ignored it like nothing happened. And the neighbors, I don't know, I don't remember as far as the neighbors, they're happy with us or not happy. I don't remember that particular situation. Not too long, staying there, I would say about a month, perhaps to 6 weeks, one particular, and we heard of pogroms, happening after the war. Here and here somebody was shot or killed or attacked here, and we were getting this information. And so we were aware that things are no good again. And one particular night, late at night, somebody knocked at the door. Father got up, and with a big, huge door, European doors, and with heavy locks. And he was cautious, and he asked who it is, and they wouldn't say, says, "Open the door, Jake, open the door, Jake," in Polish. And he opened it a little bit and had his foot against the door, and he looked, and there's a gun facing him in his face. And my father was pretty strong, and he just slammed that door and put that bolt in, and ran through the back. Whether he opened the window or broke the window, I don't know, he just jumped out of the window and ran. He did not come back till the next evening, with his pajamas, I think, half lost somewhere, And we were quite worried for my father, you see, and finally he came at night and he said, "We must leave. They're threatening us, and it's quite serious, you see." So he arranged someone by horse and wagon to take us into the city of Rzeszów. We went there, and there was an organization of some kind which was leading us to Austria, different kind, to bring us where we want to go, to a camp, to Austria, that is the base. People want to go to families, to Canada, or to the United States, or to Israel, wherever they want to go, so they were working from this.
Was this a Jewish organization?
It was a Jewish organization. I don't remember this particular one, you see. So they took us in a huge building, I would say something like this, 5-6 stories high. It was full of all kinds of people from all over. And we stayed there about 4 or 5 days, and a pogrom happened. So that caused another chaos, you see, by the Poles, and the Polish army was involved to get us out of there. And so from there we left. Should I go in details what happened, why the pogrom happened, what they've done? That was, I believe, before Passover time, and there was always anti-Semitism about Passover, the matzahs. There was some myth, you know, that we use blood, you know, human blood to bake matzahs. And I remember as a child, you know, in school, oh, it's Passover coming, you're going to bake matzahs from blood, you know, and this kind of things, you know. So what I heard, that a child was killed by a car, by a vehicle, and you know, near the building there, and was buried. 2 days after, or 3 days after the burial, they dug out the child and threw it on the steps on that building, that apartment, saying that that child was slaughtered, you know, to use the blood. And so the whole army, it had a good excuse. They came and surrounded the whole building, and somehow word got out from somewhere that this building was surrounded by the police. And the Russians stepped in, and before we knew, within an hour, everything was dispersed. So they set us up, to maybe a day or so, set us up and to go to Krakow. And from there, there's going to be a shaliach from Israel, and he's going to take us across Czechoslovakia and Hungary, Romania, so on to Austria, to that particular camp. So during during that trip from Rzeszów to Krakow, there was a city, Tarnów. Used to be a very Jewish city as well. A lot of Jewish families lived there. And I guess they phoned the wire at the police in Tarnów that there's a train going through, you know, of Jewish. And what their intention was, I have no idea. They took us off and stopped in Tarnów. They took us off the train. I don't know how many people there were hundreds of people. And a big empty, some kind of compound, I don't remember what it was, open. And we sat there, and just one young police man with a rifle standing and just guarding us. We heard a scream in a little side there, like a door, like a little room or shack, I don't know what it was. Somebody screaming, a young woman screaming. And before we knew, after a while, she came out, all clothes, you know, I guess she must have been raped, that sort of. And she was very, very upset and crying and like hysterical, and she wouldn't stop. He said, "Stop, stop." He said, "He wouldn't stop," and he shot her right in front of us. So right after, again, they let us go back on the train. We came to Krakow. In Krakow, we stayed right in the center of the heart of the city there. As a matter of fact, the point when Pope Paul he became Pope, and that was his church there, you know, in that center, you know, like something like Broadway, New York, you know, the different streets go in different directions. And they took us away from there and on a train to Czechoslovakia, I remember that. And they took us down off the train, and again, passport, there was no passport, there was no nothing, you know. And he says, well, we're, you know, displaced people, and we're trying to immigrate somewhere, but they had families, so they're taking us. So they took us off, they sprayed some disinfectant, whatever, you know, make sure, and they let us back, and then the weather was bad. I remember we were sitting on open cars, you know, with coal on top, till we got to Hungary, you know, and took a couple days, and there again we were left in the open, waiting for another train, and till finally we came to Romania. And there they put us in a little empty house, and waiting, someone else supposed to take over and take us across to Austria, to the, you know, to the border. Nobody showed up. We just don't know what happened. And everybody was on his own. He says, we're going to do it ourselves. And my family went on our own, I remember, during the night, climbing the hills and down the hills, and we were close to the patrol. You could see him or hear him talking in Germany. How do we go by him? It was chaos, and we got through. I don't know how we were seen or not. We got through till we finally came to a place, I believe, a camp. It was called Koblenz, you know, a very, very frightening camp. And somebody must have come down there, or maybe somebody was waiting there for us. We didn't stay there too long.
Why did you say it was a frightening?
It was empty, totally empty. Sort of, the forest was sort of half burned, very, very strong odor of some kind. We didn't know if people died there, buried there, or something. We just weren't aware of anything. It was like an ambush in the forest, in the middle of the forest. And we left there, and we went to, I would think from there we went to Bindemichel, which is near Linz, outside Linz. And we stayed there till we had, we applied for visas from family to come to Canada.
We're coming to the end of the tape now.